Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Swami Jyotirmayananda Society, our journey to self realization. Please subscribe for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang. We are currently exploring the book Yoga Essays for Self Improvement, authored by Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. Today we are going to pick up a very important topic: how to develop contentment. Contentment is also known as Santosh, and it is one of the gatekeepers to the palace of liberation according to the scripture Yoga Vashishta. There is a popular saying, a contented mind is a continual feast. A spiritual aspirant must gain a profound insight into the art of developing contentment in order to advance on the path of yoga. Contentment is a spiritual quality that opposes the vice of greed. A mind dominated by greed, craving, and restless desires is discontented. But the mind that enjoys serenity, repose, peace, and desirelessness is contented. The world abounds with discontent. It is rare to find truly contented people, for such people are sages and saints. Those who pursue the objects of the world in order to acquire happiness and fulfill their desires continue to be restless because happiness does not exist in those objects. Patanjali Maharshi says, Santoshat Anuttam Sukhalabha. By developing contentment, a yogi experiences unexcellable bliss. Raja Yoga enjoins Santosh or contentment as one of the basic niyamas, spiritual observances. Pleasure that arises out of sense enjoyments is a modification of pain because it is conditioned by raga klesha, the affliction of attachment. Men are driven to find happiness in the objects of the world due to the presence of raga or attachment in their minds. When mental attachment is removed, the objects lose their value and enchantment. Happiness that arises on the basis of the senses is totally different from the bliss that is experienced on the basis of contentment. During the state of contentment, the bliss of the self manifests through the serene atmosphere of the mind. But in a state of discontent, the pleasures derived from the senses continues to feed the flame of desires and cravings. Happiness is not quantitative. You cannot gather an ounce of happiness here and an ounce there and thus accumulate a storehouse of happiness. In fact, happiness is qualitative. Just as the sun manifests its radiance more and more as clouds are dispersed, so the bliss of the self manifests more and more as the restless desires of the mind are dispersed by the practice of meditation and spiritual inquiry. Sage Vyasa says in the Mahabharata, all the happiness that is available on this earth as well as in the heavens cannot equal even a 16th of the bliss that arises due to the cessation of cravings or Trishna. Egoistic desires, greed, cravings, and the manifold mental involvements arising out of these, such as fear, insecurity, worry, and grief, keep the mind in a state of discontent. This is how a man may be immensely rich and yet never even enjoy one peaceful night of sleep. Can desires be fulfilled by the objects of the world? People seek happiness through fame, power, wealth, and sense enjoyments, but no one has ever been fulfilled by these. Poor men crave wealth, yet the craving of a wealthy man for even greater wealth is far more intense than the craving of a poor man. Nobody is satisfied. The restlessness that dominates the minds of people who are apparently very powerful, famous, and prosperous is at least as staggering as their external achievements, generally speaking. False contentment versus true contentment. Many identify contentment with a negative form of passivity. They find it impossible to blend a life of activity with one of inner contentment. According to them, how can it be possible for a person to exercise self effort towards the various duties of his life if he is fully contented? How can a desireless person turn out beneficial works for the upliftment of humanity? Here, it is important to note that not only false contentment hinders all that is creative and vibrant in human personality, true contentment sublimates cravings and desires into spiritual energy. Men endowed with true contentment are then a fountain source of immense spiritual energy for the good of the world. In the state of false contentment, there is no sublimation of greed and craving. There is a state of inertia. True contentment arises due to sattva, the principle of harmony and purity, while false contentment is sustained by inertia or tamas. The two might appear to be alike, but are as different from each other as samadhi, superconsciousness, and sleep. The system of Sankhya philosophy describes tushti. Tushti is false contentment as an obstacle to enlightenment. When a person is contented due to a misconceived notion that nature will somehow lead him to liberation without any effort on his part, it is called prakriti tushti. When he depends on time alone for his spiritual advancement, it is called kala tushti. When he stops his self effort by relying on fate, it is called bhagya tushti. And when a person is satisfied with the means without working for the end, it is called upadana tushti. For example, you need to dig up a treasure, but suppose you become satisfied by merely acquiring a shovel, you are then developing upadana tushti. And there are many other forms of false satisfaction that an aspirant must remove in order to develop true contentment. The methods of developing contentment in Yoga Vasishthas, Sage Vasishtha describes four gatekeepers at the palace of liberation. They are contentment or santosh, serenity of mind or shama, good association or satsang, and spiritual inquiry or vichar. He explains that if a person were to befriend any one of these four, the other three would join in automatically. This statement gives a deep insight into the interrelatedness of these qualities. Contentment, serenity, good association, and spiritual inquiry go together. An aspirant must take recourse to satsanga or good association. He should serve the sages and saints with a spirit of dedication and devotion. Nothing purifies one's heart so effectively as the service rendered to spiritually enlightened personalities. In fact, services rendered to sages and saints is really directed towards the services of humanity because enlightened men live to promote harmony in the world. Maintain a balanced life. Allow your mind to taste the sattvic or pure joy which arises as a result of practicing meditation, reflection, repetition of mantra, and performing deeds of generosity and goodness. The mind will strive for more and more spiritual joy. and it will develop disgust towards the objects of the world. But in the absence of this divine taste of pure joy, the mind continues to revel in the polluted pleasures of the senses. Contentment promotes the development of vairagya, dispassion, and viveka, discrimination. Contrariwise, if you practice dispassion and discrimination, you will be able to develop greater contentment. Think of the perishability of objects. Can anyone take any of his possessions with him after death? Can anyone be fully satisfied with the objects of the world? Reflect upon the illusion of worldly pleasures. When the light of reason begins to shine in the firmament of the mind, you will be able to dispel the fog of greed in a short time. So, we will continue this satsang tomorrow. We will finish this topic and start a new one, the art of detachment. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Hari Om Tat Sat.